Okay. Um, I think I'm recording. Why don't we get started? um, I know,
Cool.
Carl, you have to leave first, so maybe you want to go first?
Sure. Let me go. I'll share my screen. All right. Great. Can you see my screen?
Yep, we're there.
Okay. Excellent. I'm going to present a couple things today. The first thing that we've been working on pretty hard over the past 2 weeks or so is updating all of our metrics so that they are built off of SQL Mesh, which I'm sure Reuven will talk more about, and can be exposed through both our API as well as eventually on the website. So I'll show a little bit behind the scenes of what it takes to create these new metrics and how we've been using SQL Mesh to generate them. So first off, let me just go into my coding environment. So we basically have these metrics here, which are set up in what looks like very syntactically similar SQL to what we've been using before with dbt. There's a few magic parameters here, which we call from our metrics factories, but basically this allows us to generate a pretty simple query. In this case, we're looking at gas fees, and we provide a simple transformation. In this case, we just sum them up. Here's another slight variant where we are actually counting the distinct number of artifact IDs, users in this case, that are interacting with a particular contract. So these are some pretty simple examples. All of these come together in our metrics factory, which allows us to calculate these on a rolling window. In this case, we're doing a 30-day window, and you basically configure these here. You reference the SQL model, and then in order to run this, there's a command that we do. I'm not going to run it right now, but you basically pick a set of time intervals that you want, date range that you want to run it for. You execute this command, and then it will run it against your local DuckDB. We have some good guides now that are easy to follow and get this done. I had a little bit of trouble the first time just getting a few things set up on my local environment, but it was pretty easy to troubleshoot.
How I noticed.
And then here's, yeah, what's that?
Oh, sorry. No, go ahead. I just noticed that there were like in that issue, you're kind of keeping track in a checklist of how far along we are. Like, I'm curious,
Yeah.
are the ones that are unchecked, like there's blockers that we're waiting on, or these are just things that are in progress, or um, curious what the.
Yeah, let me come back to that 1 second.
All
So
right.
just quickly here, this is what it looks like running running SQL commands against DuckDB locally. So again, you can query the different metrics models that we have and get things back that look like this. Nothing fancy, but it's nice to have it working. Um, we pushed these yesterday, so hopefully soon they will run and show up. And then yeah, getting back to the status of all of this, um, we basically have, you could say maybe 2 or 3 different levels. So the ones that are checked off right now are the most basic metrics, which aren't really doing any complicated aggregations, and they're not referencing any other, say, labels that we might have about different artifacts. So where things get a little bit more complicated is where we have concepts like a trusted user or even a high activity or low activity user, which needs to be calculated separately in some kind of a user model. And so once we've done those calculations, we need to bring them back in and derive the metrics, referencing those additional user models. So here we'll have to think through whether we want to um, just kind of do this brute force right now, or actually set up the user models for, say, an optimism trusted user, a power user, etc. Create those definitions and then make it so that you could look up a metric for any user type. So that's yeah, I guess ready to get to your question. That's kind of where
Got it.
things are at right now. Yeah.
Basically, like the trusted user models rely on data that's currently not in ClickHouse, right?
Yes.
And so there's an
It's
open.
not. It could be though. It could be because we have, we have the concept of a user, which functions like a project. So a user
Yep.
can own various artifacts. But right now, the only users that we populated are Farcaster users. We haven't, created GitHub users. We haven't created, say,
Yep.
a power user for the superchain.
Oh, okay. So this is related to the thing. This is why you've been pushing on user groups, right? Is like the plan of
Yeah.
attack to create these users and user groups in DBT, then copy them over like we do for projects and collections, and then leverage
Yeah.
those in the SQL mesh
Yep.
models. Got it.
Yep.
Okay, I understand now.
That's the plan.
So there's nothing blocking you. It's just like there's more work that needs to be done to make those things happen, is what you're saying.
Um, yeah, nothing blocking right now. Uh, we had some kind of initial conversation about what might be the best way to design those directories. I think where we landed is we're just going to design them as DBT models, as opposed to something like an OSS directory where you could like enumerate all of the users of a certain type. So for example, you could have an algorithmically generated user model which says if you've done X, Y, and Z, then you're considered a trusted user. A variant could be I'm actually just going to list a set of people, or take a list that's been created from an airdrop CSV file, and you could have those types of user groups defined. We can obviously support that, but I think we'll just start right now with a user group being a DBT model.
I think that's right. That probably makes the most sense to start with. And you're comfortable, like sync2db and the flag for those Mart models is now already wired up to ClickHouse, right? So you're comfortable
Yeah,
writing those models, materializing it in Dagster, making the copy happen, and then like continuing that work in ClickHouse, right?
I think so.
Yeah, cool. Awesome. Yeah, that's exciting.
Yeah. So that's where things are here. There are probably gonna be a few issues with like OpenRank because we've shut off OpenRank, or they've shut it off. We'll have to get that going again. But anyway, it's the end is in sight. I think actually. So right now we still don't have these kind of coming out the other side where they're accessible by the API. But yeah, we're close to that.
Yeah. I think I see the bigger picture now in a way that I felt like I was only seeing it piecemeal before, so this is cool. Thanks for explaining.
Yes. We're almost there.
Almost.
So let me see. Okay, I'm gonna jump to something else. So if we look at our own ecosystem, our own community, and we talk about the metrics that we care about, we're not obviously having a huge on-chain impact. We're not trying to get our stars up. What we do care about is having a growing community of active contributors. And so using kind of the standard definition here, this represents the number of individuals who commit code, open a pull request, or open an issue on one of our repositories. And so I think last demo day, I showed a screenshot I showed this actual dashboard. Here's a screenshot of it, which basically shows, actually let me just slideshow mode, which shows our monthly active contributor growth. There's some interesting things that we can look at here in terms of how many contributors we have of all time, how many have since become inactive, and right now what the ratio is between returning contributors and new contributors. Obviously, the thing that we really care about is the number of returning contributors and either keeping that steady or growing over time. So one thing that we can do is actually benchmark ourselves against other fast-growing OSS projects that we look to for inspiration. So you have Hugging Face, Geth, Farcaster, just a few examples. We can now, actually I'll just share this, we can go in here and select any of these projects here and it will pull. It's a little bit slow, but if you want to see, for instance, Ref is a paradigm-led project to create Rust Ethereum. We have Go Ethereum, the Rust version of that. It'll take a second to load, but we can see what their contributor, this is their contributor graph. how that's gone up and down over time. Down here, we also have the ability to see who these contributors are, what other projects they're contributing to, what their activity patterns are like, so we can compare ourselves against that. Oh, there's a bot here we need to filter out.
I'm guessing this is still connected to BigQuery and not ClickHouse.
No, this is connected to both. Most of this is coming from ClickHouse.
Oh, okay.
But not the metric, because we don't actually have the metric running in ClickHouse right now. So I grab the data and then I calculate it separately.
Cool.
Yeah. But yes, this is coming from ClickHouse. Yeah. So right here's Hugging Face. You can see a lot of growth. Here is Geth. They had a big surge at one point in their issues, so I filtered that out because, as we know, once the metric becomes a target, it ceases to be a good metric. So they had a bit of that issue where people were spamming them because they thought they would get funding if they opened an issue. And then here's Farcaster as a third example. So in any case, we're going to start exploring ways of growing contributors, and obviously the most important thing is retaining them. A few opportunities to contribute right now, just to kind of put these out there for everyone. Number one, we've kicked off the 4337 Data and Standards group. There's a working group that is looking to integrate different sources of data about account abstraction, ERC 4337 activity, and then start building impact models on top of that that could later be used for retro funding. So ideally, we can trace the entire value chain from, say, the wallet provider to the user actions that the user is performing, to the apps that they're integrating with, whoever's paying the gas fees, and then ultimately to the canonical 4337 contracts that are generating sequencer fees on Base, Optimism, and other chains. We have some active work going on in the Arbitrum community with the Cartographer Syndicate. There's a few people working on adding projects to OSS directory and linking up the contracts and GitHub repos for those. OSS funding, we're doing a push right now to try and get more data in OSS funding, additional ecosystems having those mapped so that we can create funding related metrics. Connecting new data sets, we have a few examples now. So we have Open Collective, we have the work that Santiago's been doing on getting EAS data hooked up. We have the Lily data, which David Gasquez has recently connected. So hopefully that continues to grow. We have an active collaboration going on with Optimism and Base right now, as well as Charmverse and Gitcoin on the Sunny Awards. We're designing about 60 or so pretty simple metrics for that, and there's a contributor who's helping us with this. Another example is where a team has basically said, we're just going to bring our own funding. We're going to raise funding, get a grant, and do a project on top of Open Source Observer, just pretty self-contained and independently. So Valueverse is a part of the Token Engineering Commons, and they have gotten a grant and are going to be doing some analysis on the health of token projects on the superchain. And then coming up the next couple weeks or so, there's a huge amount we're going to be doing around data challenges. So we want to get some competitions going on Kaggle. We want to explore other opportunities with Byte Explorers, and then we're planning a large hackathon in Thailand with Funding the Commons. So watch this space. There'll be many more contribution opportunities. The place to go for all of this, of course, is on our docs page, the Contribute to OSO. We'll try and link as many of these resources as possible to the contribute page on our docs. I think that's it. Any questions?
Man, Javi's joining at such an exciting time. Like I wish there was a way to convey to you just how, like, compare and contrast this to our demo days like a year ago when we were just working off of this hacky indexer script that we wrote for RF3. Like, oh my god, it's like heartwarming to see it all come together.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Actually, one other example. So there's a researcher, like, kind of in the spirit of people should be able to go to OSO and just start exploring whatever they're interested in. There's a researcher that is just looking into doing network graph analysis, and our events data is basically just one big graph. You can look at all different sorts of it can be GitHub, it can be the Forecaster social graph, it can be peer-to-peer transactions on Optimism, etc. So we're also trying to create some resources that will show people how to do their own network graph analysis for whatever topic suits their fancy.
Cool.
Which again doesn't exist. Like people spend months curating these data sets. I think it'd be just really cool to have a place where those types of researchers can come.
Totally.
Maybe there's only a few dozen of them, but we'll see.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Carl. Super exciting.
Yeah.
Reuven, since we're talking about docs, do you want to do a quick overview of the new technical architecture diagram and then talk a little bit about your metrics factory?
Yeah, please. Hold on. I guess let's just do the whole thing. Cool. Yeah. So, can you see my screen?
Yep.
Sweet. Here, yes? No. Wait, where did we put it?
Technical architecture.
Technical architecture, right. Awesome. Yeah. So, actually, thanks, Ray, for putting this together. But we have made quite a few changes to the architecture that we have. Previously, we were just doing. Let's see if I can load this up a bit. Our data collection to BigQuery, and then from BigQuery to. We were previously using Cloud SQL, and now we're using ClickHouse. But we used that to power the website. But now, because we love being on the bleeding edge, I say that partially with sarcasm, but I enjoy it. We are actually also running now sqlmesh on top of our ClickHouse database. So we have multiple materialization steps. There are a couple of reasons for this. One, we wanted to see if we could do kind of a slow transition to SQL Mesh world, because I think there's a lot of really nice things that come from being able to semantically understand SQL and write code around that, which is something that SQL Mesh can do. And then also just we want our public data to be continuously accessible on BigQuery. So what we actually do is we've now started thinking the world as upstream of events and downstream of events. And when I say events, very specifically, Javi, you'll probably see this at some point, but we have a model called int events in DBT. And
let's call it time series events by artifact is what it's actually called now. We don't.
Okay, yeah. So time series events by artifact, that makes way more sense than the previous name. So basically, yeah, what these events are is they happen to be if we distill all of these events coming from various data sources into events that all go into a single table that we call time series events by artifact. And basically these could be things like contract invocation. So did you call a contract? Eventually we'll have the transactions. Maybe we'll likely have some form of the transactions on all the blockchains. You have like commit code, issue created, pull request created, etc., etc. So
and soon funding events.
Wait, what?
And soon funding events.
And then funding events, exactly. Yeah. But yeah, so what we've realized is we want to get metrics from that data, and part of what's useful about having everything in a single table is that we can derive these metrics, all from just writing fairly simple aggregations on that event data. So that being said, some of these queries actually got too large for BigQuery, so that's why we ended up having to do them on ClickHouse with SQL Mesh. SQL Mesh allows you to be able to batch um, like queries on some arbitrary timescale. So basically, what we're doing now, instead of doing a massive query against all data at all times on BigQuery, SQL Mesh allows you to break that into very, very small chunks. So we do actually daily queries now in order to roll up all of this data. So, but yeah, that's kind of how we've gotten to where we've gotten. But a lot of the same things still exist. We still use Hasura, although there is now a potential like custom component with Apollo. I mean, I don't know if the previous version of this had shown that. And then, yeah, Hasurus now is connected directly to ClickHouse, and that is how the front end users are able to access, and the API users are able to access all the data that we have. But yeah. I think maybe then the next thing we can, yeah, actually, Ray, do you want me to continue with metrics at this point?
Do you feel like it's ready to demo any of the factory stuff, or do you want to wait till next time when it's more plumbed up?
I could go over kind of what we are planning on doing.
Sure.
And actually, while Carl was working, I got the project joined to work.
Yay!
So
Yeah, I want to see
that. Cool. Like yeah. Thanks, Carl. Yeah. So yeah, we can go over it. It's you'll see a lot of terrible print statements because there's just a lot of bugs right now, or there were a lot of things I was debugging and. Print statements are the best way to do them sometimes.
That's what it looks like when you're on the bleeding edge.
Yeah, it's exciting. So okay, so let's just look at this issue actually first for these metrics. So one of the biggest things that we've been trying to figure out this last sprint is basically so we currently have a way to do this in a very, very basic fashion. So again, kind of the reason why we moved to SQL Mesh is to be able to get these very large metrics queries running in sort of smaller chunks. A lot of them dealing with like rolling windows. But in addition to that, we also want to support other things, right? So roll-ups. This is the term I'm using for it. There's probably a better term. I don't know that term. We should likely figure out what that term is so before I go down this path too far. But basically, what I'm calling a roll-up is essentially aggregations over some arbitrary time. So there's daily, weekly, monthly.
Can't we just call them aggregations? Isn't that what timescale calls them?
Yeah, I think that's probably the right term. Yeah. So it's just like I was trying to distinguish it specifically from rolling aggregations, but it makes sense that it's a rolling aggregation and one is just a simple aggregation. So
yeah, maybe time ag and just ag or ag fun.
Yeah. Time ag. Okay.
Sure. Yeah. I prefer in our code style we push
are much more verbose.
Yeah, we push towards verbosity as opposed to shortcuts.
Time aggregation.
But yeah, adjective aggregation is a common way to describe it. Like, in timescale they call them, there's continuous aggregations, but then there's also other forms of aggregations, right?
Okay, cool. Yep.
Cool, yeah. So I will rename that. But so basically, these time aggregations we're able to do, and we have done in the past, things that happen daily, we get the simple aggregation for that. So and then weekly, etc., monthly, and all of that. But then on top of that, we also want to go through multiple dimensions. Instead of and these dimensions being the artifact, two artifact, two project, two collection. And when I say two, it's basically from any random arbitrary artifact who is interacting with a specific other kind of entity or artifact or project or collection. So yeah, so we ran into some issues with that before, but I'm not going to go too deep into that. But I think maybe this next sprint I will write some very deep documentation. I actually think I'm going to make a blog post about how to do some of this stuff with SQL Mesh because it
Yeah.
just doesn't exist anywhere. So
Whoa,
um,
dude.
yeah,
File the issue. That's awesome. We definitely want to write more blog
yeah.
posts like this.
Yeah, this is like, deep technical else's project, but I think it's extremely important and useful. I basically think I have a way of making like a generalized plugin infrastructure for for SQL Mesh that I may propose to them.
Y-
So yeah, but yeah. So let's dive right in. Basically, oh well, actually, let's take a deeper look. And the other thing here is the rolling windows, which is kind of the main thing that started all of this. But now you can also set the intent is you can also set arbitrary rolling windows. You can go, you pick some arbitrary number and you set a unit of time. This unit is actually it's completely arbitrary. I don't actually like the. It'll be passed in as a macro variable to the SQL that you write for the model, but it doesn't actually have any bearing on how things are materialized unless you use it in that model. So these numbers are in the same way are also used that way, but yeah, so it's up to the model writer to actually use those properly. But if you do use them properly, yeah, you get the amazing benefits of being able to do some cool things with these window, like looking back 90 days or looking back 60 days or looking back 3 months or 6 months or however, right? So, yeah. And then you'd also be able to do that by entity type, right? So these are all automatically generated. So that's the whole point of this time series metrics and these time series factories, or this time series metrics factory, I should say. Which and then that should hopefully make our front end very speedy. So yeah, so let's take a look really quick. So the code is in an awful way. But but we could take a look at kind of how some of this is currently wired together, and what actually does work. So this is going to be a fairly quick thing, but we can go over this more maybe next time. Okay, so everything is now in. So one of the things I had to do is move a lot of things into metrics tools. Metrics mesh is where SQL mesh things live, and metrics tools are where all the factory and things live. There's a technical reason for this for SQL mesh purposes, and I will explain that at some point, but today is not the day.
I believe
so
you.
Here we have this metrics factory. And yeah, actually, so I took the stars example that we had in that doc and am testing it now. The rolling stuff still needs to be a little bit debugged, probably. But yeah, so now we're able to do artifact and project entity generation. So I can show that very briefly here. So yeah, actually, so I ran this just now. So I'm not going to run this because it does take a little bit of time, but I will look through this data, and we can actually look at. So you can get metrics by project.
Yes.
So these are stars by project. You can do weekly. And these are all automatically generated. I don't know if monthly's even going to have anything based on the queries that I made. Oh, it does. Cool. Yeah, so yeah, I need to look at why some of these numbers are a little goofy, but in general, this is doing kind of the things that we expect. If you look at, or sorry, it's generating the right information. I think I just need to do a little bit of tweaking on some of that. But if you look at these models, these OSO metrics models, it's just a simple, very simple query. So you can you get a roll-up bucket. This is probably the aggregation bucket is what I'll call it, or a sample date. and that is automatically generated based on the kind of like where it is in the process. So this might be a daily bucket, this might be a weekly bucket, monthly bucket, etc. And then you just kind of do the rest of your query with your aggregation. And what happens is actually sqlmesh, because it does have a semantic understanding, I can go in and find every reference to events daily to artifact that does a group by query and does an aggregation. So conditional on those, and then do a join on to artifact ID, replace that with to project ID actually. So that's how all this works. But yeah,
So
that is the basic overview.
this is cool. I'm trying to visualize in my head, like in the issue we've discussed, like the most complicated version of this that we can possibly think of right now is the one around the lifecycle chart, right? So it's basically you have a rolling window that classifies developers as part-time, full-time, first-time. You have rolling windows that define counts over the last, say, 6 months or 3 months, and then you have diffs that calculate like did this like how many people go from one state to another state. I'm curious, like in this world, what would that look like? I know you don't have it implemented yet, but maybe you could just describe.
No, that's a great question, and that was actually kind of a big thing about what, like one of the things that kind of slowed down some of the changes because I had to think about that. So one of the other things you can do is so I'm thinking of this as like sort of layers of metrics, and yeah, you kind of have like the first derivative and second derivative. So the first derivative is very simple, right? Yeah, it's basically, oh, okay, well, I'm going to derive metrics from one other metric, like one other rolling window. And then I realized actually doing the second derivative of that is actually not all that different either. You just need a way to reference like
The generated
a different like a different table, a different metric model, and
Right.
then also a different like set of rolling windows, and that's why this value here is very arbitrary, right? So you could set this to 2, and this unit could be like 2, like other 6 months or other metric 6 months, right? And so like this is only used as part of the naming convention here. So this would actually come up to be like active days to entity over window unit here, if you can see that here. But yeah, what we can actually do is you can use that, and there's now a special like function here. You'd be able to use peer ref, and then you'd select the name, the sort of this name here of the other metric. So let's say stars, or actually active days. And then you can then also reference a different rolling window set than the current one that you, or actually you must. So so if I wanted to get like the second derivative of something that has like an 180 day rolling window, then I would say something like this, window 180, and actually this is the syntax. Yeah, there will be documentation here at some point for this, and then you can also select by entity type, etc. But then essentially, given the so there's a what is it? It's a trailing, or there's a window, trailing window macro variable. So this will tell you how far you should look back for the current query. So you can use this to be like, okay, well, given this, I can look back this arbitrary number of whatever size window that I'm currently looking towards, even in the previous of the dependent, or yeah, like whichever metric I'm depending on. So it's not. There will need to be some documentation because it's not super duper straightforward, but I do believe that it is possible with this world here. So, and then you can generate this, you could yeah, you could generate this on kind of any time scale that you want. Does that
Awesome.
make sense? Probably
Yeah.
doesn't.
A little bit, but I think at an abstract level that makes sense. I feel like yeah, if you could just do one example, I imagine the best one example to do would be use a 30-day rolling window to classify developers as part-time or full-time, right? And then
And
uh,
then see the change in
and then
like yeah
yeah, let's do like 3-month window for counting um like how many active like full-time or part-time developers there are, and then like 3-month window, and then use the 6-month rolling window to basically compare 2 3-month periods, like 2 quarters basically,
yeah
right? To say like
yeah yeah yeah
from this
yeah.
quarter like how many people went from part-time to full-time. And I know there's like a million other permutations, but if you just do one of those examples, I feel like, Carl and I can flesh out all the other
Oh yeah,
permutations.
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that makes a ton of sense. Yeah. So those are that's exactly like the kind of thing that I was working towards in here. So
Yeah.
yeah, I will be able to write that, and we'll have
Awesome.
something. So,
Awesome.
yeah.
Man, this is so cool. Um,
This is this is like yeah, it's
it's
awesome, and it's also really frustrating because we are such on bleeding edge that
I know
some days
you.
don't always work.
I feel like after you write this blog post, SQL Mesh is gonna try to hire you, but like, cause like literally what you're writing is all the stuff that you wish existed because SQL Mesh metrics doesn't exist yet, right? And
It doesn't exist, and
and
they specifically said they deprioritized it, so
and
they're
even
like
if it
not
did
giving it to
exist, like I'm not sure. Like I've been playing with
It
Cube.
doesn't support this.
Exactly, exactly. Like I was playing with Cube for a
Yeah,
little bit, and it was not clear to me how to do this stuff
it
level,
you
like
can't you
this
can't with you.
nested
I don't
complexity.
understand why you can't, but you can't.
Exactly. There's no way, even with all these different metric flow, like semantic modeling things that exist, like this way that you're doing nested rolling windows and nested automatic generation of models, um, I I don't see other products actually have this in their design spec, let alone have an implementation for
Yeah,
it. So, um,
yeah, we are on the bleeding edge,
super
which
bleeding
is
edge.
fun. It's fun.
I think this would be a great blog post. I just filed a couple issues for that, so thanks for suggesting that. Um, cool. So Javi, yeah, would you want to show any of the concurrency stuff that you've been working on? You might be muted, though I think I see a new screen.
I think you are muted. Yes. Oh,
Okay. Hey, okay, cool. We can hear you now.
Javi,
Oh, we lost you.
we cannot hear you. Actually.
We still can't hear you, Javi. I'm not sure.
Oh
Um,
no.
the okay. I mean, I'm happy to go first if you're having some mic issues. Feel free to pop back in whenever you're ready. Uh, and Santiago, thank you so much for the pull request on EAS. Like, I'm super excited about this. If you're comfortable, like, we'd love to showcase the work in a demo as well. If you're ready to demo, but like, no pressure. Like, we can definitely do it another week if you're not ready yet.
Yeah, no, that's great to hear. I know Javi corrected a lot of things, and I'm very grateful for that because I'm very new to this. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe I wanted just to make sure that everything was good, and maybe I think next demo day I
Okay.
can show it with more confidence.
That would be super cool.
Cool.
Yeah, if you want to demo next demo day, I'd love that. I'm so grateful that you're contributing, and it seems like you're picking it up pretty quickly. So, yeah, let's shoot for next demo day then.
Okay, great. And I'm super grateful to you guys for the patience and everything.
No, I
But yeah,
mean
sure.
it's awesome. I'm Yeah, this is great. It's something that we definitely need. So appreciate your help. Uh, Javi, are you back?
Bobby, you got your mic working? Oh no.
No, it's still not working.
Oh man.
Let me
Okay.
demo some stuff real quick because I feel like uh, my stuff is there's a lot of it, but it's all very quick and very short. Can you guys see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, so one thing is just like an FYI for everybody is that like our ClickHouse cluster is set to auto idle, and that's on purpose, and we're just trying to save costs right now. We will probably leave it always on in the future, but you
I
might
mean, we
see.
got a public sequel now, so
I know it actually doesn't go
oh,
idle very often, because we actually do jobs very frequently now. Um,
oh okay.
but I haven't seen this in a while, but don't be surprised if you see this. This basically means that like, ClickHouse is running and oh sorry, ClickHouse is idling right now, and your request will just like wake it up. So one of the things that's relatively new is we added this like collections page. It feels like ages ago, Reuven, because I know I demoed this to you like last week, but like this actually was this sprint, which is kind of crazy. So if you click on any one of these collections, all these collections, as everything else, are defined in OSS directory. So this is like the full list of everything OP retrofunding for. And you just get this nice little table where you can kind of like explore, you can rank on any particular metric. So we see like, I don't know, if you look at contributor count for the last 6 months, which were the projects that had the most contributors in the last 6 months in any particular round or collection. So this is exciting. We're starting to curate these things for different ecosystems, including Gitcoin grants and Filecoin. We welcome, contributions to OSS directory, which will basically, this we take exactly these YAML files in terms of deciding what to show in any particular page. So feel free to add new collections. Feel free to update existing collections. This is all relatively new. We are currently in the process of refactoring our project and artifact pages. So there's a little bit here that's in progress, but I'm not ashamed to show it. So if you click into one of these project pages, we now have this like network toggle. So you can choose which network to show these key metrics on. So you probably, I don't know if you can see that, but like, or you can say all networks and it just sums between the two for these on-chain metrics. This data right now is empty. It's all this SQL mesh stuff that Reuven was showing earlier. We're going to get that plumbed up this sprint. So hopefully by then you'll see SQL mesh data in here. Previously, we were showing some older data that we were generating in a DBT model, which we've since deleted. So that will be coming soon. And I'm still working on these artifact pages, but you should be able to click into here into an artifact page pretty soon. I've also this sprint added the ability to search across collections and projects. So the search is now working. And a fun little thing that I wanted to show real quick. I don't know if you guys have seen this yet. I added this like super last minute yesterday, but it's just like a really simple studio. It literally took half an hour with the SQL API that I added. It's just like a text box, a button, and a table. But you should be able to do something like select star from I don't know, yeah, the collections table. Hit run query, it'll load, it'll populate here. You can also select anything Arbitrum related or anything optimism related, like that. It does search across both the description and the display name, and then you can download it as a CSV or a JSON. So this is behind our auth wall right now, so you do have to log in first. But you can run any queries in this OSO kind of studio that you would be able to run in ClickHouse. So we don't have to give everybody access to ClickHouse. Like you can, just start doing things in here already. So that's cool. And the last thing I was gonna demo, which is I'm really excited about this because it took a while to get to this point. But we recently added all the Filecoin data, so you can subscribe to it on BigQuery. It includes a bunch of stuff. I've explored some of it, but I haven't even explored all the data sets yet. Sorry, I need to log in real quick. But it does include like blocks, transactions, traces for FEVM. So we can plug that into all of our existing data pipelines. We haven't yet, but we can. And David Gaskus is going to help us with some of those DBT source files that we need to make that happen. But it also includes a bunch of other stuff that is like super interesting that we could incorporate into a future data challenge, but we haven't yet. Like, things related to miners, things related to storage deals. It's all in this Filecoin Lily data set. So you can see all the actors, you can see all the blocks. They even have things like rewards and chain economics around like how many fill is mined or vested or burnt. And then all these FEVM things, traces, transactions, blocks, we should be able to use in our pipeline. So yeah, really quick, but like we've been adding a bunch of stuff to the front end. It's like actually starting to look a little bit more like a front end and a little bit less like a neglected service. But yeah, that's all I wanted to share. Hopefully we'll have more to show in the collections and projects and artifact pages soon. Are you back, Javi? Oh, sad face. I have a feeling you're probably struggling with mic settings in Discord.
Yeah,
So no
I've
worries.
had many issues there.
I have experienced that in the past as well. No worries. I'm sure you'll have even more things to add next time we do a demo day. And yeah, Santiago, if you want to demo your EAS stuff next time as well, that'd be super cool. Any questions or any discussion points people want to make?
Not really. I'm just excited.
Awesome. Well, cool.
Ray, it's funny. I can make the Studio 500. Here's this.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. It was really naively whipped together like super quickly.
Yeah.
So like if
So,
there's
like, what error are you throwing? Like, so I'm doing it by like trying to run a create table, just because yeah.
Oh yeah, so it's it is set up with some thought towards security. We do have a read-only user, and so if you try to do things that are not selects, I have no idea what it'll do, but it shouldn't work.
Okay. So I guess it gives a 500, yeah, to the server, or it gives something to the server, and the server doesn't know how to handle it, so it gives a 500. Okay. Cool.
We probably
Cool.
do need better error handling. Like I said, I whipped this together super quickly.
I mean, hey man, 500 error when this happens is better than like 200.
Yeah, yeah, like drop
I was
all
just
tables,
double checking the
200.
read-onlyness of this. Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah,
also tried to show all the tables and like select from the information schema, and yeah, it seems fine.
of
I
course.
can't
Of
get any
course,
worse.
Reuven would be adversarially testing my SQL Studio on day one. God damn it.
Hey, man, better me than anybody else.
Yeah, also like if you do a gigantic select with like far too much data, I have no idea like how it'll perform. There's like no pagination, there's like no thought towards like literally I did
Yeah.
this in a half an hour yesterday, so no, please no
Awesome.
judgments. It was we will improve this over time.
Cool.
Cool. Well, yeah, let's do some sprint planning later today. Thanks for joining.
Cool.
Thank you.